Hi everybody, got a new project today. I'm sitting in the Mazda and I'm going to demonstrate what we're going to try to fix. I'm going to back up out of the garage. You hear those brakes? When you back up and you hit the brakes, they make quite a racket. Now let's pull this thing in the building here. I don't know if they'll do it going forward. Let's try brakes. No noise. No noise there. All right, well, that's what we're gonna work on. I'll be back. Well, I got this car where I can work on it. I've already done 3 of the wheels, but I'll show you the last one. These are the tools I'm using. I gotta get the car up. Each wheel's gotta get up off the ground because we gotta pull the tire and wheel off of it. So I'm using a floor jack, a jack stand, and a lug wrench to do that. Once I've got the car up, got the wheel off, then all I really need for this particular vehicle is a 14mm wrench. In this case, I'm using an open end wrench. I also have something I can use to pry to pull the caliper off. So I'm not gonna bother trying to show you how to jack your car up. I assume you either already know how to do that or somebody else. You know, you can look at somebody else's YouTube, show you how to do that safely. Okay, here we go. This is the front wheel. Obviously the tire is off of it. We're looking at the disc brakes. Basically what I'm going to explain should work for any car with disc brakes. Basically this is the brake caliper. This is the disc that the brake squeezes on to stop the car. So the caliper has pads on it. There's a pad here and there's a pad on the back. Those pads are what we're trying to get access to. So to do that, we only want to remove this part. This is the caliper portion. This does the squeezing, so to speak. And this caliper will come off of the pads and we can kind of move it out of the way while we service the pads. So this particular one, this is all a solid piece of metal here. And this bracket coming up here, held on by this 14mm bolt here, another one down here. All we have to do is remove these 2 bolts. So let's just quickly do that. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. Should be coming up to loosen, right? Yep, should be coming up to loosen. And then go down to tighten. Like thinking correctly. Yep, so now that one's loose. Let's try this one. Yep, now that's loose. Now, with this car, I find once I break them loose, I can pull them out by hand. They're not very long screws or bolts. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just pulling them out. You know, you don't need any elaborate tools. With a 14mm wrench with a little bit of length so you can get some leverage on it, you know, is a good thing. Now with that off, you know, typically this is still squeezing the pads a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a pry bar and I'm getting in right up against the caliper. I don't want to bend up that metal piece there, and I'm just prying out. See how that caliper just kind of comes out? I get in there, I can pry this way a little bit. But this caliper comes off. It's a little heavy, not a big deal though. And we can just, you know, you don't want to break any of the hoses or anything. So I'm just going to set it up here where it's out of the way. Now here's our pads, right? So there's a front pads here. So you can see that pulls right out. This is the friction material that stops the car by rubbing against this. We do not want to get any oil, grease, or whatever on this surface. There's also a pad on the back, okay, that looks somewhat similar. So, you know, mentally make sure you keep track of which is front, which is back. So, I mean, for whatever it's worth, this is the disc that pushes out, or, you know, well, let's call it a caliper. This pushes out from hydraulic fluid going into it, and it squeezes those brake pads between this and this. Okay, But I think a lot of the squeaking that we're getting is the brake pads either moving against this or moving against these guide surfaces, okay? So, and that's not unusual that you get this squeakiness. All right, I'm gonna take these over and I'll see you at the bench. Alrighty, so over at the bench, this particular surface right here, that's where that caliper pushes. You can see where the pad or the caliper's been pushing on it. It's a little gritty and there's like a raised surface there. So this is optional, but I'm just putting them in here and quickly just running a wire brush over this to try and take some of that high, I don't know, let's call it mild corrosion. Knock that down a little bit. Just like that. Not a big deal. I'm gonna do the same thing on here, although I gotta tell you, this feels pretty good. Looks like just a little bit of rust there. You know, the interesting thing with this particular vehicle is it doesn't get driven a lot. So there's not a lot of wear. You know, it's more that things start to rust a little bit and, you know, corrode a little bit. So you see, I just knocked that down a little bit. Now we'll grease them up. All right, so, excuse me. All right, so I bought some of this disc brake quiet. It's basically a brake lube. And what I'm gonna do is put some on the surface here, and on the surface here, and then I'm gonna put some around these guides here as well on each side. Be careful not to get any on the friction material. You know, how you do this is up to you. I tend to always put way too much on there, then I have to figure out a way to spread it around, just like what I just did. So I'm going to use that over here. This is the one that goes on the back. All right, so now let's just get a little excess here. Put it around these guides here. All right, I'm ready to put them back in. Okay, we're back at the car. This is the back one. Back one's always the hardest for me to get in. I think it's a visibility problem. Well, there's only one way it goes in, so you know, it's clearly not right. Let's try to start the top first, see if that works better. There we go. Just make sure it's all the way up against the rotor. Let's do this one. A little easier to see what we're doing here. All right, I'm doubting myself here all of a sudden. I did that wrong. This one clearly had the disc against it. This one belongs over here. So I got it confused, front and back. I should remember because of this clip in this case was on the back. So let's do this again. I'll just keep doing it till I get right. Okay, so those are in all the way. Now, there is a chance that when you go to put the caliper back around it, this will be a little too tight. I haven't had that problem. As a matter of fact, this is slipping on. But what you could do, if that happens to you, is you need to push this in a little bit. You know, and there's different techniques for that. I've used a C-clamp. You know, put a little piece of board here, set the C-clamp on so the back of it's, you know, in the back. Other people come up with creative ways to, you know, tighten something down, backing it up against this. So there are ways to do it. But these are, because I'm putting the same brake pads on, you know, it's just going right back on. So there you go. Now, when you put these bolts back in, I always start them by hand, and, you know, there is a little jiggling around till you get everything lined up right. But, you know, start them by hand. You don't want to cross thread them. You know, they shouldn't go in real hard. You'll know when they're in. There, that one's going in. So I'm gonna run that almost all the way in. And I'll do the bottom one. Again, you might have to move this in and out a little bit for that bolt to start correctly. And that's how you know everything's positioned right. Okay, so now I'm running it in by hand. All right, so that's in. Use my wrench. Tighten this up. Still goes in more. Okay, that's fine. Here we go. There's probably a torque setting for this, but I'm just going based on how tight they were when I took them off, and you know, they weren't that tight. So there. Done. I'm going to put this tire back on, and we'll take this out for a little test, see if it's still squeaking and squealing. All right, here we go. We're going to see if this thing still squeaks. Brakes, nothing. Okay, going a little faster. Backing up here. Only does it backing up. I don't hear anything. That's good. Well, there you have it. I think we had a successful brake silencing. Hey, if you like the videos, find them useful, please subscribe or give us a like. It all helps. Make a comment. Take care now. Bye.